Greetings, seekers of hidden knowledge, and welcome to Overheard Nation. Are you ready to uncover a secret that the history books decided to leave out? The story of America's first great gold rush did not begin with a seasoned prospector or a trained geologist. It began quietly, on a Sunday morning in 1799, in the rolling hills of Cabarrus County, North Carolina. Here, on a small, unassuming farm, lived the Reed family, German immigrants struggling to cultivate a life from the soil. Their world was one of hard work and simple faith, a world far removed from notions of precious metals and unimaginable wealth. On this particular morning, 12-year-old Conrad Reed was meant to be watching the family's turkey flock, but instead, he chose to pass the time by the cool waters of Little Meadow Creek. While fishing with a small bow and arrow, his attention was caught by a gleam in the shallow creek bed. He waded in and pulled out a large, heavy, yellow-colored rock. It was strangely heavy for its size, almost 17 pounds, and had a dense, metallic luster unlike any stone he had ever seen. Curious but unaware of its significance, Conrad carried the heavy rock back to his family's log cabin. He presented it to his father, John Reed, a former Hessian soldier who knew much about farming but nothing about geology or metallurgy. The strange rock was examined, commented on for its unusual weight and color, and then, finding no immediate use for it, was unceremoniously set aside. For the Reed family, it was just a peculiar souvenir from a boy's morning by the creek. The unusual yellow rock, heavy and gleaming, found a new and humble purpose in the Reed household. It was not placed on a mantelpiece as a decoration, nor was it stored away as a curiosity. Instead, for 3 full years, the 17-pound chunk of raw gold served as a common doorstop. It held the rustic cabin door open on hot Carolina summer days, letting in the breeze. It was kicked aside by muddy boots. Children played around it. Visitors and neighbors would come and go, some occasionally remarking on the funny-looking rock holding the door, before stepping over it without a second thought. Day after day, a fortune beyond the family's wildest dreams sat on their doorstep, unrecognized and unappreciated. The object that could have purchased vast tracts of land, built a mansion, and secured their family for generations was simply a utilitarian stone, a silent and extraordinarily valuable witness to their simple daily life. John Reed remained preoccupied with the more pressing and understandable matters of his farm. He had little time for strange rocks his son brought home from the creek. For 3 years, the knowledge of his family's potential wealth lay dormant, waiting for a simple trip to town to finally awaken it from its long, unassuming slumber. The slumbering fortune was finally disturbed in 1802. John Reed, perhaps on a whim or simply needing to clear the doorway, decided to take the strange yellow rock with him on a trip to the market town of Fayetteville. The journey itself was unremarkable, a farmer taking his goods to town, with the heavy stone tucked away in his wagon. He had no idea that this single object was about to ignite a frenzy that would change the course of the nation's economy. In Fayetteville, Reed sought out a local jeweler. He presented the heavy rock, asking simply what it was. The jeweler took the stone, examined it, and his professional composure likely masked a wave of pure astonishment. He recognized it immediately not as a strange rock, but as a massive, solid nugget of almost pure gold. Realizing the farmer before him was completely ignorant of the object's true value, the jeweler saw an opportunity. Instead of declaring its nature, he skillfully deflected and asked Reed to name his price for the lump of metal. John Reed, a practical man who knew the value of corn and cotton but not of ore, thought for a moment. He named what he believed was a fair, even generous price for a heavy, useless rock, $3.50. It was roughly a week's wages for a laborer at the time. The jeweler, concealing his shock, quickly agreed. He paid the farmer the trivial sum in silver coins. The exchange was made. John Reed left the shop satisfied with his good deal, while the jeweler was now in possession of a gold nugget worth thousands. The first transaction of America's first gold rush was a quiet act of deception. John Reed returned to his farm, but his mind was not at ease. He began to hear whispers about the true price of gold from others more familiar with the world of commerce. The suspicion that he had been cheated grew into a certainty. A short time later, Reed made a second trip to Fayetteville, this time not as an ignorant farmer, but as an angry man demanding his due. After a tense confrontation, the jeweler was forced to give Reed a far more substantial sum. It was still only a fraction of the nugget's full worth, but it was enough to make John Reed a wealthy man. The experience had fundamentally changed him. He was no longer just a farmer, he now knew his land held a secret. He organized a small mining operation right there on his property, along Little Meadow Creek. He and his partners, using simple tools, began to unearth more gold, and then more. The ground beneath their feet was rich beyond belief. News of such discoveries could not be kept secret for long. Word spread like wildfire through the Carolinas and beyond, igniting the nation's first gold fever. Thousands of men left their farms and jobs, flocking to the region with dreams of instant wealth. Makeshift mining camps sprang up overnight, and quiet creeks were transformed into noisy, chaotic scenes of frantic digging and panning. But the Carolina gold rush had a dark and brutal undercurrent. As larger, more organized mining operations were established, wealthy landowners brought in their most valuable and expendable resource to work the dangerous pits and riverbeds, enslaved African Americans. Much of the gold that flowed from the Carolina hills was extracted through their forced, unpaid labor. So much gold was being pulled from the earth that it began to disrupt the national economy. To handle the massive influx of raw metal, the United States Congress officially authorized the creation of the first federal branch mints in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Dahlonega, Georgia. The doorstop found by a young boy had now led to the creation of permanent federal institutions, forever changing the financial landscape of the nation. For 50 years, North Carolina was the heart of American gold production. It created fortunes, built towns, and established the nation's financial infrastructure. But history is often written by the loudest and the largest. In 1848, a discovery was made on the other side of the continent that would eclipse everything that came before it. The news from California was not a whisper of gold in a creek, it was a thunderous roar. The sheer scale of the California gold rush, with its tales of massive nuggets and instant millionaires, captured the world's imagination. The Carolina story, with its slower, more methodical beginnings, was quickly relegated to a historical footnote. The nation turned its gaze west, and the memory of America's first gold rush began to fade. Yet, to forget the Carolina gold rush is to misunderstand how the nation was built. It was the Carolina gold, minted in Charlotte and Dahlonega, that provided a stable currency for a young and expanding country. It was the mining technology and expertise developed in the Carolina pits, both by freemen and tragically by the enslaved, that were later carried west to the fields of California. This forgotten rush was not a prelude, it was the foundation. And it all began not with a grand expedition or a corporate venture, but with a 12-year-old boy, playing by a creek. Conrad Reed never saw the immense wealth his discovery would generate for others. He remained a simple farmer his whole life, forever tied to the land where he once found a strange, glistening rock and, for 3 years, used a fortune to hold open a door. Thanks for exploring this secret with us. For more stories forgotten by history, subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss the next investigation.